So I want to say first, welcome and hey everyone to our brand new entrepreneur series called Thrive. Today we're going to be talking about evolving from rejection, which is a very interesting topic, I think, for everyone. And joining us to talk about that is going to be Ben Hillman from Virgen Extra. Welcome, Ben. Thank you for being here. You're muted still.
Sorry about that. Hi, Brett. Thanks for having us.
So before we jump into this, and we do have others, but I just tell us a little bit, Ben, about you and what you do.
Yeah, with pleasure. I work for a creative agency, a brand consultancy, as we define it. We are we've been an agency since 2006. Our company is headquartered in Madrid, in Spain, and I manage our operation and our portfolio with our clients in Latin America, in the U.S. We're a small boutique agency, but by our nature, we work internationally. We worked in a couple of dozen countries thus far, and hope to continue that growth. And yeah, we love what we do, and we're very blessed to do it.
So for those who are joining us, the format here is Ben's going to kind of guide us through this discussion, and joining us to contribute to that discussion are two very well-known partners here, Rayanne and Sarah George. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So Rayanne, if you'll tell us a little bit about you and what you do, and then Sarah George, I'd love for you to do the same. So Rayanne, if you'll kick it off.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure some people have seen me in the community, but if you haven't, I've been part of Wix being a web designer for about the last 5 years. I was also part of the ambassador program. So yeah, my company is Shaka Designs, and I solely do Wix design.
And Sarah George?
And I'm Sarah George. I'm pretty sure most of you guys know who I am in the Wix community, at least. If you don't already, I am one of the co-founders of WixCon, but I am also owner of 34 Designs, which is the company that you all have known me with, but I am now newly rebranded, reinvented as DigiDog Consulting, and I have been a Wix designer and entrepreneur in this space since 2016.
Well, we're really glad to have both of you from our partner community, and I want to thank you both. And Ben, I'd like to thank you also for being here. When we talk about rejection or evolving from rejection, that's a lot to talk about. And I think everybody that has a small business or has clients or potential clients or goes through a bid process, I think everyone can sort of identify with the idea of being rejected. Is that, and where do we kick this off, Ben? And I guess my question to you is that a bad thing? What do we learn from it? How do we grow? Where are we going? Ben, you tell us.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I have all the answers, so we've come to the right place. No, I'm just kidding. I think what's really interesting about this topic, Brett, is that it gives us an opportunity to reframe something that could ultimately be of great value to our business. So really, to answer the question directly, is rejection a bad thing? I think rejection is a natural part of the business process, and frankly, the personal process as well, not just the professional process, which is, to my point earlier, being able to reframe, kind of shift that paradigm in terms of seeing getting no's as strictly a bad thing. It doesn't have to be that way, or rather, we can look at it a different way. In short, I think getting a no can and should be a good thing. It can be a positive thing, and there's a number of ways in which we can make that we can relay that into a positive thing for our business and our own development.
What's one thing, if I get a no, where's one place I could take that? Or if you get a no, let's kind of deep dive into this. What's one good example?
Yeah. So, I mean, right off the bat, a lot of us in our industry are obviously well-versed in getting feedback that might ultimately end in a no. And I think for starters, us getting any feedback in the first place is the first sign of positivity, which is to say that there are times when we don't get any answers at all. A lot of us are used to elaborating these case-specific proposals based on a brief, based on an opportunity. Someone wants to develop a new brand asset like a website, for instance, and we take the time to put it together based on the particularities of that opportunity. And then sometimes we don't even hear anything back. So right off the bat, I think one positive thing about getting a no is the fact that we're getting something. We are receiving this feedback. There's an acknowledgement. There's an identification of us as professional partners or potential partners. And frankly, we're big proponents of the criticality and the value of managing expectations. And I think that getting a no is a way for the other side, if you will, for the prospect in this case, to manage those expectations. And those expectations include, things like respect, mutual respect, and professionalism. Whereas again, we're in a situation where you might not receive any feedback at all. It might seem like your hard work and your invaluable time that goes into developing those proposals might not necessarily be recognized in such a way. So right off the bat, I think getting a no shows mutual respect, and if nothing else, it lays the groundwork for a relationship that might not materialize in that instant with that project or opportunity, but could very well come back and become something later on.
So, Sarah George, Rayanne, would you like to add to that? Is there anything you want to jump in on?
Well, I totally agree. Actually, something that's funny that I've experienced specifically is I send out this proposal that I put all this work into, this client discovery moment. I send a proposal out and I get no response. And it's really frustrating because if any of you guys are like me, like I put a lot of energy into my client discovery and initial meetings. Like I take the time to get to know this person, not just this project. And so it's a little bit of a like, oh my gosh, they don't like me moment. And I am that sensitive, even though I don't always show it. So one of the things that I learned through different sales training opportunities I had is rather than spending time on that is to just put them into a drip campaign. So I dropped them into a campaign that says they didn't respond, I didn't hear anything, and it's kind of a nurture moment. They get an email from me every 3 to 6 months. I forget what it's set for right now. Actually, I've had 2 clients that were significant dollar amounts, which is why it matters, that I didn't hear anything from. And 2 or 3 years later, I got an email, hey, do you remember that project? And so then what was really fun about it is that I had the opportunity to really make the decision of who's going to say no.
That's really valuable.
Yeah, it was.
So Ben, let's continue. Rayanne, did you want to jump in or?
Sure. I mean, I did have one thing. It's similar actually to your experience, Sarah George, because when you get a no, this is how I really formulated my process with my clients and the proposal process and everything, because when I was starting out, there was a point where all of a sudden I hit like a wall of just no's, like no, 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 no's. And so I was like, okay, what's wrong? So that's where I kind of formulated my own process too. And I realized, number one, I was spending way too much time on writing the proposals, too much time to get that many no's. And then I also kind of thought about what's the conversation that I was having? Like at what point does it seem to like, where am I losing them? Like where does the energy change? And ever since then, when I've made those changes where I have this like template proposal, but I still put in like, the time and the human into it. It's not just this drafted thing that says the same thing to every single person, but it's really changed everything for me. And I've gotten a lot more yeses, still no's, but that's okay.
So when we do these, when we spend that time, Ben, is there a way to sort of in the beginning, how can we structure that to sort of maintain a healthy dynamic with the project? Can you lead us down that train of thought?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, both Rayanne and Sarah George just had wonderful examples that I think go a long way in answering even this question. We're taking this information, this feedback, and we're taking action with it. It's helping to inform and educate our methodologies. We're talking about these processes, which we all have. And it's really important that those be, I guess, the word formal, comes to mind, but that there is a process that we follow so that then we have ways to measure the process and and kind of, create these benchmarks along the way. I think, again, those are really good examples on a number of levels. But for starters, I think it proves the point that receiving a no or having a rejected proposal is not the end of the road. And I think that's critical. And sometimes it's 2 or 3 years, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. But I think, and this is, you mentioned a healthy dynamic. From our, and it's so helpful to hear, about each of our unique experiences. We're very much a relationship-driven agency, and I think business is personal. I think business has to do with people, and so we invest a lot of time and effort in ensuring that our client relationship strategy, if you will, which really just means how we communicate and how we are able to again establish expectations and work to surpass those expectations becomes sort of so essential. And I think again this is part of that relationship driven strategy, meaning when you get a no, it's not the end of the relationship. It's just one milestone in that relationship, arguably not an ideal one. And so again, it's these steps that happen, and I think having this forward-looking, longer term view for relationships is something that could be very helpful to a lot of us. It's not, we don't look at our business as a transaction with a transactional model, meaning like it's not about doing one rebrand, developing a visual identity, or helping a company develop how the brand articulates with a verbal identity, or a one-off campaign for the holidays or whatever. These are all manifestations, or these are all parts of this process and this relationship. And I think again, when we get a no, that is a sign of respect, frankly, from our prospect, and I think one that we should also kind of emulate and continue to carry on, so that we can maintain this healthy dynamic even when the business doesn't materialize at that point. I think it's just a matter of keeping maybe a longer term view of the relationship.
So a question to that, Sarah George mentioned earlier that sometimes she doesn't mean to, but sometimes she can't help but take it personal. So Ben, when you say you're in the business of making it personal, and you're in the business of having real personal relationships with your clients that you're going for, how do you push that out, and how do they know that within a short amount of time that they are exposed to you and your agency and what your goals are and how you approach things? How do you make that so clear, so when you do feel like you get that no, maybe it wasn't a good fit? Or is there a process where you say, maybe I didn't approach this the right way, or I wasn't clear in how I do business? That's kind of a multifaceted question, but I'm throwing it to you nonetheless.
Yeah, of course. And I'd love to hear what Sarah George and Ryan have to say about this too, because evidently, again, in our space, in our industry, in the creative world in general, I mean, it's difficult to create these kind of dogmas, perhaps in the financial industry where we have, so much regulation and things are arguably more black and white. That's not quite the same in the world that we live in. And I think, all this idiosyncratic kind of behavior and so that really, kind of, it almost like shines a light and puts a premium on our personalities and the egos, which I say that in the most positive way possible. And so that's a reality. And I think, we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we say, that there's nothing personal about this, especially when, this conversation itself is kind of predicated about like the effects of getting a no, and the effects of us as just, sensible human beings would dictate that getting a no is difficult. And sometimes, maybe, especially after the amount of time that's invested, maybe more difficult than we'd like. So I think it's important, for us, the passion, I think attitude has so much to do with it. And obviously this is, maybe a bit of a parallel conversation, but we try to have a very congenial, positive attitude as far as our emotion and our person and our persons are concerned in our projects. And I think that helps a lot. We try to keep the more negative aspects, if you will, of emotion, which are inevitable too, especially working in an artistic, creative world. But I think this is a bit of a broad, abstract answer. But I think trying to preserve a positive attitude. I know it sounds a bit cliche saying that, but having a positive attitude as you filter the feedback that you receive can be very helpful. And again, when I say positive attitude, I mean the no's don't have to be a negative thing. With these no's, you're able to, like we said a moment ago, you're able to take action. And so one quick example might be asking questions and conducting almost like a root cause analysis from why you're getting a no, without being arriving to that position or approaching that in a negative way. Basically, asking questions that are going to let you compile information that can help you for the next time you have a similar opportunity.
So if I can share an experience I had, actually, one of my very first clients way back in 2016 was an educator who wanted a logo and a website. And we did this client discovery, and I was just finding myself in the artistic space that I used to live in. And so like just kind of reclaiming that piece of me kind of a thing after being a mom. Y'all know how that goes. And I did this discovery with her, and she told me what she wanted. She wanted confidence. She wanted cool, calm, water-like, but like ripples in the water, like education spreads, like they have a similarity there. There's an analogy we can use here. We had this conversation. I did a Dropbox with her, put all your things you like in here. I did all these color analysis with her, and I gave her, and I kid y'all not, please don't laugh at me, 20 iterations of a logo. Okay. I gave her these 20 iterations. Like I worked my behind off to above and beyond to please this woman. And when we sat down to review her logo, she goes, "This is nothing like what I told you." I lost it. Like my soul bled at that moment, and then, we had some other conversations and we dismissed each other. The truth is I was brokenhearted. I'm telling y'all, my soul bled. But walking away from that, what I realized was this: set limits. 1, 20 is too much. 2, it's not my project, it's hers. Why am I crying over this? Like, she's commissioned me to create her project, not mine. So to be that invested was a step too far for me. So that no became so painful when it shouldn't have been. It doesn't mean that I don't need to understand her, kind of take the effort to walk a mile in her shoes perspective, but it's not mine. And then on top of that, at the end of it, she was an educator. So she actually sent me an evaluation of my performance. I still have it. Yes, it was painful to read. Oh my gosh. But what was really hilarious is afterwards, when I got back to myself, and about a week or so later, when I was finally ready to read the evaluation she wrote and see the logo that she went with from a different designer, the logo was red. That was the biggest flag for me. Do you know what it meant? She didn't know what she wanted. So why was I beating myself up? It's no big deal. Like, it's personal, yes. And she gave me several no's, multiple no's, but they were all good no's because she didn't know what she wanted first. And for me to take it personal was, at that time, a sign of my immaturity in the business space that I was entering into, and an opportunity for me to grow or, run. It took me a minute. I ran it first, and then I got there. We grew.
So that's an awesome story. And Ben, to tie it in sort of, I guess, for kind of what you were talking about with the root cause analysis. And it really, in this case, it had nothing to do with Sarah George. It really had to do with where the client was, right?
Yeah.
And I really liked what you said earlier too, about keeping it polite and keeping the energy positive, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who in the early stages, like Sarah George is talking about, when they get that no, it's like cat claws out. Why? This is, I totally understand that. And I guess it just takes time and finesse and sort of, I guess, a lot of root cause analysis to understand it may not be about you. Rayanne, I see you nodding. What would you like to tell us?
I feel the same way, just based off of what both of you have said. I had to grow from that same thing. And I think especially in a creative space, I think we all have to grow from no, because we do take it more personally as creative people. And it's something that I've grown out of too. Thankfully, I was finally able to separate the emotion, from the project. And I have two examples to say to this. The first one is when I'm doing my initial review with my client, I've delivered the website, we're looking at it together. And even from the very beginning of the project, like our first call, before I even design anything, I tell them, hey, as we're going through this, I want to make sure we can openly talk to one another. You're never going to offend me. If there's something you don't like, I need to know about it. And it has totally changed like the whole client relationship for me, because from the get-go, everybody feels comfortable to say what they want to say. And yeah, so that's opened it up huge, because now nobody takes it personally. And then as far as like keeping things positive, when I do get a no, I do appreciate it. I prefer getting a no versus just crickets, because that's still another opportunity for me to continue showing up how I am, and just, I respond to them. I used to get upset and I would just like, maybe like angry, delete their email. And then I was like, okay, that's not okay. I need to like respond to them. They said no, that's respectful. And I grew from that. And so now when somebody tells me no, I thank them for their time. I, wish them luck on whoever it is they're working with. And I let them know like, hey, I'm here just if you need me. I never want to say like, if it doesn't work out, but I just want them to know like, hey, I'm here if you do need me. So it's all opportunities.
I agree.
Yeah.
And like Sarah George was saying, do you have some people that you've had that response to, and then out of the wild blue, you'll get a response back maybe a year, 6 months later saying, hey, actually I said no, but do you remember that project? Has that happened to you as well?
It happens all the time.
Right. It's such a thing. Yeah. Some people say no just to cost. Like, it doesn't matter. Your presentation was amazing. They say no to cost. They blame it on a component of the presentation. They go with a cheap designer. They wish they had gone with you. And then they call you back crawling, begging for you to give them your time again.
Yeah.
And that's where you also have another opportunity to be positive and be polite and careful and caring with them.
It's true, because a no isn't always a no. Like, it could be a no right now. Like, I've had people that have come to me and they're like, listen, I just don't have the budget, but I'm going to get it. And they come back to me in a couple months and they're like, let's start this. So yeah.
That's really interesting. I think I love to hear these stories, because again, we all have the same different but similar experiences. I think in our business, and I think it got me thinking about this. We're talking about this root cause analysis, which really is just kind of maybe a fancier way to encapsulate a simple concept, which is just making sure that the flow of communication carries on, and that there's still a very, again, respectful and professional correspondence after the fact, after a no in this case. And so many times it's, the prospect of recline. Of course, I think there's their price sensitivity, any kind of, budgetary related consideration has a lot to do with it. A lot of the time they don't necessarily understand, or they can't quite, equate, or if they do have like this vision of the final product, they don't understand why it costs that much, or how it would, or why it would. But and so all those things always like kind of come back to us, the service provider, meaning like, okay, this is something that I need to explain better. This is something that I should have said this, or should. But one of the things that it got me thinking about, especially in the example with the educator from Sarah George, it's fundamental, I think, that we also take the time, particularly like in this briefing, scoping process and the discovery process, how you want to call it, that we are also mindful and aware of who is of who we're talking to, and like kind of what makes that person, that idea, that brand, it could be a huge company, and we still have to get our own appreciation for that matter. I think understanding who we're talking to. And the reason I say this is because, frankly, sometimes, obviously, we're all in presumably profit-seeking companies here, and so obviously, we always have that drive of wanting to get new projects and generate revenue and grow our business. But sometimes sometimes no's can be a good thing, in the sense that maybe that wouldn't have been a good fit in the first place because that person didn't really know, what they want. And by the way, the truth is that many times the client doesn't know what they want. And because necessarily they haven't been asking the right questions because they've been so laser focused on the hows and the whats of their business, which makes all the sense in the world. But it's the job of individuals like us, of groups like ours, to go in there and ask why, and then really, take a deeper dive. And that's really, and in our experience, in our case, that's what probably we love to do the most. We love to take the time to understand why people are doing what they're doing and verbalize that in a way that is human, that's simple, that is beautiful, aesthetically, obviously.
Ben, to something you said, Ben, the educator, I know her still, see her, cross paths with her in professional spaces. I'm so glad that she said no. We are absolutely different styles. I'm very laid back. I'm very easygoing. My communication is a little slower. If there was one complaint every last one of my clients could give to me, it would be that they heard from me a day after I said I was going to get back to them. But I can claim that, I can claim that I get my job done still, but and she's one of those people that's like, if you're 10 minutes early, you're still late, and so it was a good no, but it took me time to receive and understand and really turn that into something that was valuable for me in the bigger picture, and not just oh my gosh, she said no, my feelings are hurt. Oh my gosh, she said no, I missed out on money I could have earned. All those other initial feelings that we feel when somebody gives us a no as a business, as an individual.
Absolutely, that's a great example. That's proof in the pudding. And I'll give one quick example here of a client. So we work with a big architecture firm in Spain, and it was this wonderful project. And they built up, these new facilities that housed these, amazing pieces of furniture and artwork. And it was this concept for like creatives to get together, but also the pieces there were for sale. It was a very interesting concept. This project was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and we had a lot to do with with creating the brand, environmental graphics for the place, digital assets and all this stuff. And it was a very difficult process because the owners were highly demanding, which we like demanding. We like attention to detail. And as long as, we can kind of stay on the same page, in terms of our, our back and forth. But so we did, and then the project got progressively more difficult because of, again, like this, and I'm sure we're all familiar with this, but the inevitability that the scope of a project will change once the project starts is uncanny. I mean, almost always, we're going to do, a new brand identity or a new brand implementation, a new website. And by the time we get, rocking and rolling, it's like, oh, actually, I want the website to have this much more functionality. And also, what about a social media program? And I have this fleet of cars. I want you to wrap all these cars. And I have a conference room. I want you to vinyl. And it's like, okay, well, all right. So I mean, that happens a lot. And so you learn a lot about these clients as you work with them too. And again, to everyone's point, it's like this is like this education process. And my example is, recently this client, circled back with us, and they're starting, and it's like a big, brand activation, and they wanted us to collaborate, and we were obviously delighted to do that. And so we sent the proposal, and the proposal, okay, this makes sense. And so what the client did, he took the proposal, he printed the proposal out, and then he hand wrote about 10 other items, and then signed the proposal, and then send it back to us. And so at that point we said, well, look, this was a proposal for, let's say for simplicity's sake, 100, and it had A to Z in the scope. And now you want to include, an additional A to Z, but the 100 no longer applies. So we can't sign this. And he's like, no, but you guys can do this. I mean, it's not, and again, this idea that create, that, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, like that our time is not, because we're not accountants maybe, and because, we can't, or lawyers, but we've, taken a lot of time to, become specialists and kind of master our trade, if you will. And that requires, obviously all sorts of investments. And so this is an example of, we, again, in the most diplomatic and in an appropriate way possible, we basically said thanks, but no thanks. It would not be, we're setting ourselves up for failure. This is going to be tense. There's going to be friction throughout this process. We're not going to be happy because we're going to be investing so much time that we're not being compensated for. And you're not going to be happy because we're going to be giving you work. We're not making this food with love, basically. and you want us to cook with love, and because that's what we do. And by the way, just very quickly, you know, Rand mentioned this and Sarah George, like it's emotion, namely, preferably, hopefully, always the positive one, but this passion that artists, that creatives put in their work is it's an imperative tool, part of the toolkit. We have to have that. We're not robots. Design, I mean, of course, there's so many technical bits about, you know, how do we define, you know, the chromatic scale of a brand when we talk about, you know, when we create custom typography, for instance, like these things can be extremely technical, and they should be, brand guidelines, all these things. But how we get to that point, it's an artistic process. It's not necessarily quite as tangible. It's difficult to measure, and it can take a long time, which is why, you know, things cost sometimes. Among other
Is that
things.
difficult to convey when you're having these discovery conversations? Is that hard to convey to the person across the table? That's a question. Another question is, what we're talking about here is, I think it's okay sometimes to say no if you're mismatched. How do you know if you're mismatched? And I want to ask another question. Is there a silver bullet question you can ask a potential, so you get your red flag, say, hey, this educator doesn't know what she wants, therefore I'm exiting. You know, how do you hone on that? Is that something that you just get from time and craftsmanship, or are there a tip and trick you could tell someone right now that's watching? That's a lot of questions, by the way. I just do a lot.
I don't think there's a silver bullet question. This is my opinion. I don't think there's a silver bullet question, but I do think there are a few techniques and questions that can help you get there better. You've got to learn how to read the client you're working with. You've got to look for all the things they're not saying, or all the things, their body language, or their failure to communicate, or, you know, the type of communication they have. You've got to look for those little things as this fly comes to say hello to me. But one question that I know that has benefited me greatly to ask all of my clients is, what do you want? Like, I know that sounds ridiculously simple, but like giving them something Rianne mentioned earlier, one, giving them the permission, the confidence, and the space to say, I don't like this, is one thing that is key for me. And the other one is just, what do you want? And leaving them with space and time to answer that question. I have a habit of trying to anticipate and like, I'm a pleaser. I want to make everybody happy. And so I just go above and beyond when I'm in that space. And so instead of doing that, I have to really pace myself. What do you want? Zip it. Sit still now, Sarah George. So that's one thing that I have learned personally that has been really key for that silver bullet question.
Yeah, and a lot of it also comes from my intake process, my discovery call. My discovery calls are about 30 minutes long, and over time, I've crafted like all of these areas that I want to touch on about their project that really help me know if we're going to be a good fit, what their expectations are, you know, what their timeline is. Like, so for me personally, the one thing that I've heard a few times, and I'm sure a lot of other people in the community have heard this, but when a client or potential client says, I'll know it when I see it, like that's just like the worst one. Because
is that a red flag?
Oh,
is that red flag?
Please get back to me when you know what you want. Until
yes.
then, I'm busy.
And that's why I say we're not a fit. Yeah, because at the beginning too, I do something a little similar to what you do. So instead of asking them like what they want, what I do is I have them provide me tangible examples of ideas. Yes. Like, I like this, I don't like that. And if they can't provide those to me, then I can't work with them, because I'm going to design something that they're probably not going to like. They don't know what they want.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Absolutely. That's I think that I'll know when I see it, or the lack of, you know, being able to produce references are probably majorly are probably, you know, major red flags in terms of clearly there's an absence of criteria that's going to make my job very, very difficult. And this
Tara agrees.
Pardon?
She agrees too. Tara agrees too. So let me ask you this, Ben. So let's say you get into this space where you may get one of those "I'll know it when I see it" moments. Does that mean at that point that this means you can say no to them, or is this salvageable? Can some of these clients that have unrealistic expectations be reeled in? Maybe. If not, is it okay to say no to them?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, the scapegoat answer is it depends on the client and basically their flexibility, how fluid they are, and how open they are to adapting to change, or open to things. If it's like a very rigid client, which typically, like the bigger organizations, leadership has like very strict kind of preconceived notions of like how things should be, then maybe it's going to be kind of difficult. But I think one of these questions had something to do with this, but I think experience and how many conversations you've had, how many focus groups you've been a part of, or scoping calls or discovery meetings that you've had. Those, and this is another reason why no's are so helpful, because these all make up your experience, which then enable you to navigate these conversations more effectively. And that's really critical. In our I've been doing this for some time, and I feel very comfortable basically getting in front of from a startup to Coca-Cola and everything in between, and having discussions that could give me information that allow me to direct the conversation in a way that I know will take us to a place that will be the most valuable to them. And I think that's the kicker. If you can't take the conversation anywhere to where you think it aligns with your value proposition, then that's going to be very, very difficult.
Actually, something I learned from someone in our group, Marissa Friedman, actually taught me this one. People say, I don't know what I want, whatever it is, and I used to just kind of pass them off by either giving them kind of we all do this, and most of us do this, charging them a higher fee so that I'm pricing myself out, so I know they won't accept the proposal I send them. But something Marissa has done that she's taught me to do is to create a sense of urgency for them. Hey, listen, it doesn't sound like we're a good fit this time. I've got other things going on. If you decide to get back to me, hopefully I'll have time for you then. If not, I wish you the best. And answering in that way lets them know that my time is too valuable to waste for you to not take this project seriously. And so what I found by doing that is it puts the onus on them to do their work, because to know what they want is their job. Like, don't come to me and say, build something amazing. Come to me and say, build an amazing website that does these 5 things with these colors and this, or this feel. So it puts the job back on them for them to take it serious. And it also guarantees me that the rate I give them, they're going to respect. Yeah. I just, ever since I changed my perspective in response in that way, like, I have minimized arguments over why they should pay the rate that I've given them.
Yeah, that's a great example of, again, of managing expectations and making sure that you're understanding how you work and how you're going to create the best conditions for a successful partnership.
And those situations can potentially be salvageable, like you were asking, Brett. It depends, again, kind of Ben, what you were saying, like, as you're talking with that prospect, you kind of feel them out and like, hey, can we talk about why it's important, that I need examples, or these are the things I need to serve you well? Or are they not going to receive that? Are they just going to think like, no, you do it, I know you'll make something great and I know it's going to be a disaster. But I have actually had conversations with clients like that where they didn't know what they want. And I said, okay, listen, here's where I've got to be like super transparent with you and let you know, this is why I'm asking for it. This is why it's important. Here's what's going to happen if we don't do it this way. And I tell them, maybe there's somebody out there that does work that way that's a better fit. If so, great. But otherwise, this is how I have to work. And, if it's something that you think you can do, let's do this. If not, I understand and we can find someone else for you.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this conversation. By the way, we've got some really good questions coming from our awesome attendees. So I will get to those in a little bit. There's some really good ones too. So I will come back to those. So we're talking a little bit about sometimes how we say no, and is it salvageable? So Ben, are there any other points in the no sphere before we go to Q&A? Is there any other points that you kind of want to lead us through?
Well, I think, one thing that we're either tangentially, and I think in the last few exchanges more directly, I think having this awareness, this self-awareness, from our side, that we have this, that we're also empowered, and that we're part of this dynamic. It takes two to tango, if you will, and we can also say no. In fact, we should say no sometimes. Sometimes, earlier on in my career, and I think it's probably not a rare situation or feeling, but you want to say yes to everything, and really, and you want to pick up anything that you can, small, big, or in between. And the interesting thing is that's you learn a lot because you fail a lot in a way. And when I say fail, I mean about projects that actually materialize. There's a project, and it wasn't a lot of money, and there's going to be a lot of work, but we got it and we did it. But ultimately, the amount of time and resources that were invested, were more than the income that was generated. So that could be seen as a failure, but it was really the furthest thing from it. And again, eventually, I think you begin to develop this sixth sense, as we've discussed with so many examples, as to what will be a successful partnership or not, or most likely be. We can't tell the future, of course, we can't predict it, but yeah, I think it's important for us to be aware that we also have the capability of saying no. And ironically enough, sometimes when you kind of back off it, and by the way, saying no might be an excellent example, which we've done many times that Sarah George just mentioned, which is basically put a proposal that's quite aggressive on the table, knowing that the RFP called for certain parameters, and sometimes, strangely enough, you do get callbacks, you do get follow-up meetings when that happens, and you just kind of carry on. There's different incentives for different scenarios, I suppose, but making sure that we know that we're mindful that we have that as part of our arsenal, because again, ultimately, it would behoove everyone involved to say no. So just remember that the power of no is also on our side.
And there's also many ways to say no. I learned that through time. I had to get comfortable saying no. But then even with the process of how somebody even books a call with me, it's all baked into my website, so that as they're going through reading about who I am, what I do, what I can offer them, there's all these roadblocks that I've put in that basically, hey, if you're wanting this website, lickety split, we're probably not a good fit. If you don't have the time to really invest in this project and take this seriously, then we're probably not a good fit. I just have all of these things that are already saying no for me without me having to say no, and kind of already blocking them out if we're not going to be a good fit. So yeah, it's something that I've had to get used to as well.
Yeah, something else that I have done before, which was great, is I just call the designer that I think is a better fit and go, hey, do you want to work with this client? Give me a kickback on it. Give me a referral fee.
A referral, yeah. Yeah.
And that's worked out well on a couple occasions. A few occasions, there's always those, we all know those nightmare clients or those nightmare projects, but it's worked out well, and it makes me look like a very responsible business person. I'm not threatened, I'm not afraid. Here, I've got some people who might be a great fit for you. Let me give you some names.
Absolutely, and we do that all the time. We work with other other agencies, some which have a very similar profile to ours, and we work side by side, or we maybe hand off parts of a project. And I think having a healthy ecosystem, a network of partners to make sure that you're ultimately being able to add value. And I can tell you that some of those people that that we usher to other clients will be very appreciative and most likely come back to you for other things. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And one other thing, and maybe just to wrap up this concept of us having this ability to say no, I think ultimately what it really also reflects is, or what it puts, again, kind of a premium on, is knowing, in the same way that we're scoping a client and we're asking questions and we're understanding, what makes them tick and how they work, it's very important that we also do that ourselves, with us. Clearly, Rayanne, Sarah George, we've been doing this for long enough to where we can pick up on things, but those things are connected in a way to, our methodologies, the way that we, our personalities, the way that our, our brand process, if you will. And that's really important. And that's also another reason why I mentioned, like, early on in my career, I didn't have nearly as much, I didn't have that self-awareness, that conscientiousness of like, this is how we work. This is how we operate. This is how we manage expectations. This is how we communicate, so on and so forth. Now that I know that, that's another way to more easily understand why it might not be a good fit, because you, and you know how you guys work. And when you do that, there's ways to, again, a no could be, let me introduce you to John, let me introduce you to Sarah, or whatever. And or a no could be, I think we just need to have more conversations, or this is not the time, or whatever. But I think it's important to really think about the fact that we need to always continuously be doing almost like a self-discovery process as well.
Yeah.
That's incredible. All of this information about a potential no, or how to divert a no, deflect a no. This has been really, really interesting. And I want to thank all of y'all for coming. I do have a few questions that I want to jump to, if I could jump to the Q&A real quick. So I'm going to ask, this is a great one that Prima is actually really interested in. What is your discovery process? We talk a little bit about this, specifically when we go through the process of talking to our clients, maybe to identify whether or not it's a fit. Can you give me, each of you, give me one or two tips that you do during your discovery process? And Ben, it wouldn't be I have to put you on the hot seat. You're going first.
Yeah, please, with pleasure. So I'm sure the ladies will have better answers, because our discovery process is, we try, obviously now we live in a changing world, under unique circumstances, but we try as much as possible to have meetings in person. And this is, I feel like that's a big thing for us, like for us to be present there. There's body language, there's cues, the environment, especially if you're in the meeting, but even in the office or in a meeting room. But maybe, even if you're not, I think for us, part of that discovery has a lot to do with meeting in person. And that, I think, speaks to this kind of connection that there may or may not be. I mean, this is, believe it or not, part of the discovery. And then having a conversation that's natural. We don't, and maybe this is part of the fact that we've had, several thousands of those conversations, but we don't follow a script where it's like, tell us what the company does, when was it founded, or what do you do, what are your objectives, sales, the SWOT, the proverbial SWOT analysis, anything having to do with like marketing jargon, like we can defenestrate that's not relevant, because that's not going to allow you to create something that speaks from a differentiated standpoint. The difference comes from finding the uniqueness, and you find the uniqueness through conversations that are very intentional and unique, frankly. You're asking questions. We ask questions oftentimes that have absolutely nothing to do with the business. Why are you the owner the way that you are? Why did you come in that car? Why did you talk to that person that way? Why did you pick up the phone that way? These are the questions that we ask. That's our discovery process. And believe it or not, in the most random of things, typically we'll find something that is so infinitely human and different in a world, that's very crowded, marketplaces that are very crowded, that we can basically expound upon, that we can exploit, and that we can develop into, a really powerful idea, a powerful brand concept foundation that you can build an entire brand strategy on.
Rayanne?
Sure. Yeah, my process, my discovery process, first of all, it's fully automated, which people love. Then I don't have to forget to send an email or ask for something that I need. But the beginning of the process, even just from scheduling a call, I have them fill out it's brief-ish, it's not that long, but just some stuff that I'm going to need for our discussion. Just like, what is it that you're looking for? Do you have any examples that you can show me? And then the next phase of that is, if they haven't, provided me with examples that we can discuss during the call, then those reminder emails kind of tell them, hey, if you haven't sent over those examples, we're definitely going to need it. Here's the agenda, so you know what we're talking about. But I'm the same way, Ben. Like, I have a list of like points that I always want to touch on, because I get wrapped up in the conversation of just getting to know them and their business, and just having that conversation flow so we can speak freely. but I need to make sure that there are specific things I'm asking them related to the project so that when I send the proposal, I'm sending it for the right scope from the beginning. So mine's like semi-structured, if you will.
This is great contrast, right? This is great contrast. Now, the real question is, what does Sarah George do?
Well, that's an interesting question because as I mentioned at the beginning of this call, I have completely reinvented and redesigned, revamped my entire business. So what I used to do in the discovery process versus what I'm doing moving forward is two totally different things. What I used to do was along the lines of what Rand said, and also with what Ben has said. I very much want to find that thing that makes you tick so that I understand you and who am I representing as I put this project or this website or this piece together. So I ask people things like, why did you get into this business? Do you love it? Is it you had to do it for money? You know, like I want to understand, why are you here? How did you get here? Your grandkids, your mother, whatever it is, whatever the story behind it is, I always want to know the story. That's something that as I go into I'm moving into DigiDog Consulting, that's the same thing. The difference though is instead of me being the one sending these out, I have, like Rayanne, automated a lot of these processes, and I have also brought in an assistant who is addressing all of these little pieces so that instead of me having to be the calendar, the scheduler, did all this happen? Did I get all of their social media handles? Did I find out if there's any background information I need to know before we create this story? I can just focus on the story and I can just focus on the project. I find that to be really freeing for me because as a small business owner, the discovery process for me gets really painful because I get caught up in the story too. I get caught up in the project and the energy, the passion of whatever's going on. And I don't want to divert to the technical things that need to be done, that must be done. So by expanding, bringing in staff to handle those things. So my process is basically the assistant sends all of those little bits and pieces, the automated emails go out, and I engage in this person like a human being and try to find out what makes them tick and what makes this project tick. But I absolutely do a consultation that is a face-to-face. I do not like to do phone calls or strictly email. I want to see your face. I want to see your body language. I want to see what's behind you. I want to see, are you a Mac or a PC or a combination of the two? Like, I need those pieces.
Yeah. For the record, we asked that question. I've asked that question to anyone that I've ever worked with. Why did you do this? How did you get here? And amazing things happen from there. And sometimes it's typically like the first question. Like, again, we don't have to worry about like the strengths and the weaknesses and like your employee base and your financial strategy, all of which is important and which we will get to when we talk to the people in charge of those. But when I'm talking to this person who's going to be ultimately the decision maker of this project, we need to know things that are outside of the box, as they say.
Yeah. So I think that's the best way to get the true authenticity, so that the match is there.
Yeah, and why also, because at the end of the day, if you have in a block of businesses, they're all going to talk about the best quality, the efficiency, the best price. They're all going to say the same thing. And so that's why this is such a critical part of the process. That it's not about the efficiency and the cost, and we give you the best napkins, and they're not going to. It's not that, because we can all say the same thing. At the end of the day, those are just words. But if there's, there's always a story there. Everyone has a story. And this is, by the way, why all of us in our business should be very happy that we're in this business, because as now that we have the most discerning, consumer base in the history of mankind, stories and connection, with people and brands and the things, and consumption are more relevant than ever before. But that's probably another conversation. But
easily. That one question just took us way into the weeds, which I really like. I'm going to ask one more, and it just very quickly. Lisa wants to know, do you offer consultational or complimentary consultation, or do you rope that into your discovery process? That's one question. I'll start with you, Ben, and then we'll work our way around.
We are happy to have conversations with anyone, anytime, and of course, we don't charge for those, of course.
Same.
Rayanne?
Same.
Okay. I pointed this way because it is, but really, okay. Sarah George?
Same. I do free consultations. Always have, always will.
Perfect. So this was a great conversation, and I loved it the most. I think when y'all sort of took it into the weeds, it was so great and full of information. I want to thank you so much, Ben, for being here and taking time out of your day to be a part of this and leading us here. And I want to thank both you, Rayanne and Sarah George, for coming to be a part of this and bring your wisdom and knowledge as well, and stoke that amazing conversation. And I just want to say thanks. And for everybody coming, thanks for coming. I hope this was informational. And we'll see you again next week. We're talking about thinking like a lawyer. We're going to talk a little about scope creep, contracts, and things like that you can do to help position yourself for success. Okay. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, Rand. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Have a lovely day.